Hello, and welcome to the new episode of Digital Innovators Podcast. I have a pleasure today of having Bobby Hurd, COO of the American College of Emergency Physicians, as a guest, or ACEP or ACEP. Evermed, when I say we, I mean Evermed have been working together with ACP for a little more than 2 years now. And so in today's episode, I invited Bobby Hurd to share with us the journey so far, where the organization was and his team before we met in the context of modernizing digital education, what happened when we met and the process of getting to know each other, and then after we started to work together, results, and then several other questions. So we'll start with that. But first of all, absolute pleasure to have you today, Bobby, and welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here with you. Absolutely.
All right, great. I'm excited about this conversation. So let's dive in. We met a little bit more than 2 years ago. I would think that was May, a couple of years ago. And I remember the first meeting. There were a lot of folks from ASAP on this first meeting. But one thing we usually don't know is what was the entire context before we met. So where was ASAP before we met when it comes to digital education and modernizing education?
Yeah. Well, thank you, first of all, the opportunity to be here and kind of tell the ACEP story. American College of Emergency Physicians represents about 40,000 emergency doctors around the world, really, largely US based. And then all those that participate in the emergency medicine team, we want kind of the latest clinical practice information guidelines to really be out there. This idea of modernizing our education when we met was very important to us. When I first heard about you and heard about Evermed, ACEP was in a state of really a lot of what I consider disjointed products. We had online offerings. We had a learning management system like most people do, something we called our OLC that had a fair amount of content on it. We had a product we called Virtual ACEP, which was just a course capture of all the lectures that were given at our annual meeting. We had podcasts. We had a series of webinars that we used to do. We just had products all over the place, and they lived in different platforms and they lived in different URL addresses. And so our user experience was, I would say, pretty poor. The other thing that we really didn't have the ability to do in any way is use any kind of intelligence to deliver content to our users or group content together unless we did it manually. So I think we really struggled as a professional society to the quality and content was exceptional. The way we delivered it was not exceptional. What we heard from our members time and again is that we weren't meeting their expectations. I mean, when we first started talking, though, 2023, we were coming out of the pandemic and we had all had virtual meetings and had to figure out how do we deliver content. But during that time, we never could find a platform or a solution that really could help us bring it all together. I mean, we wanted a streamlined, seamless user experience. And somehow, I think from a colleague at American College of Cardiology, I'd heard about you and Evermed product. And so I was absolutely intrigued to talk to you and see what you had created. I wanted to find out, is this just another learning management system hyped up in some way? Or had you really done something that I considered truly innovative and that our members would too, in terms of how we were delivering education to emergency physicians? So it's kind of the background.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I remember that point. And then you mentioned that you had, exceptional content, but unfortunately the experience would be such that content would not be utilized, I assume, to the level that it could be utilized. And so I was trying to understand, like, how big of a problem was that? Because problem can have many levels. Can have to a level, I hear sometimes from associations where end users start to send complaints to either leadership or so on. Or is this something you were getting from surveys? Is it something that you kind of had a feel that it's not good? Or you look at the numbers, or actually there were actual call for change, or sometimes it comes from top down, sometimes bottom up. So that's why I'm curious to understand the level of pain.
Honestly, it was all of the above. I mean, really, we had user feedback that wasn't great. When we looked at the user data, it wasn't great either because people would log on and log off. They weren't staying and viewing the content. They weren't really interacting with the sites in the way that really created true engagement and a true, I think, good experience for our users. We heard from leaders, volunteer physician education leaders, that it was just not a great experience the way we were delivering the content. It didn't look good. It wasn't modern in its delivery. And if you think about the environment that we all are in today, what do we use every day that really kind of sets the bar for us? I mean, we're all in this world of Spotify and Netflix and things that, really deliver. They learn about us, and they using algorithms, now AI, to really deliver the most meaningful content that people need just in time, so to speak, and in a way that makes it easy to find and easy to consume. One of our biggest problems that we got complaints about constantly is not only was everything all across multiple platforms, but so many of the platforms had really poor search. It was really hard to find the topics that people were interested in. I mean, we had a lot of hours of content, again, a lot of high quality content, but it wasn't easy to unearth or to find, and it wasn't easy to actually engage with.
Yeah, I'm very glad you say that because I also, from my angle talking to associations, I often hear our users or members struggle to find the content they need. And that's one way I'm searching for the content as a user. So I'm using search functionality that has to, match the expectations of today, but also content finds me and a kind of a discovery. Whereas you said the algorithm is there, YouTube, Spotify, Hulu, you name it, we all expect that nowadays, and it's not unique to younger members or younger doctors. It's actually, we all use that and we all expect that. It's not something that's aspirational, but it's an expectation. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, that expectations, of course, is not met. And then from the point of that problem, I assume it existed for some time, year, 2 or 3 or more. And to what extent have you tried to solve it in the past?
Yeah, I think, always been kind of on the lookout and scanning the environment in terms of what technology was coming on the market, what was out there that could really maybe help unify that content. But I got to be real honest, it felt very daunting. It was a massive task when we tried to start untangling and figuring out, okay, how do we take all of this content and move it over? Let me tell you just another real world dilemma that I think masked the problem a little bit, because looking at it from the user experience or from the education leadership experience, and that the poor quality was masked because most of those products, or several of those products and offerings, were still generating revenue. So, when you have something that's making money on the business side, an association can overlook maybe what the user experience. Well, that's exaggerated. Oh, maybe they just don't know how to use this correctly. And so the fact that I think we had realized we really needed to invest a whole lot more in what the user experience was and how easy it was to access content, in some ways overtook that revenue problem that we had, and that we might have to step back a little on revenue to move to another platform. And that was always part of the problem too, is you couldn't figure out how to easily make the transition from a revenue side. But I think as we looked at what we were competing against outside of medical societies in the corporate space, we realized we had to step things up in terms of what way we're delivering education, and had to find a platform that really easily allowed us to do that. The other thing that was so daunting for us is not only was it a major lift to think about how do we make these transitions from all these disparate platforms and content, but the time that it was going to take. Every vendor that we talked to, technology vendor, it was a 2-year effort, a 3-year effort. I mean, it just seemed like, oh my gosh, there's no way we could get to the other side of this in a more rapid fashion. So,
Yeah. I think it's important because oftentimes, again, I'm not an LMS expert, for example, but I talk to associations that have done the switch, and it's typically like changing a CRM or AMS system. It's like a year plus project and with a lot of challenges, and it always takes more time. So totally understand. So you want to make the right decision. You want to make sure that you increase the revenue, yeah, and you drive the engagement and you modernize. And you also want to make sure that it's not done in 3 years from now, and that there is a certainty that it will actually work. So it's a very, very hard question, and I totally understand it. And then in terms of where you were internally, because sometimes when I talk to associations, they say, well, I want to do something about it, but I don't think I will get support. Was there an alignment already that this is a problem across the levels of the organization? Or there were several people, but you kind of were close to having critical mass?
Yeah, we had to build alignment. There were folks that managed certain products within our association that either felt good about what they were doing or we don't need to change. So building that alignment and really creating a vision of what it could be and getting people bought into that. And then you had the leadership level, the physician leadership level, both from the education leadership and from your finance committee and ultimately your board to make a significant change. There's a lot of work that had to be done to really kind of build that alignment, but it all started with a vision of where we were trying to go and a belief that we could, that we had the right platform and the right technology partner to be able to get to that vision.
Great. And I'll come back to that as we talk about how you made the change, because I found that the larger the association, the bigger the change management and stakeholder management is, and the harder the task for the digital innovator that's driving it, or digital champion, if you will. All right. So then it was around May 2 years ago. And I remember our first Zoom call, and there were a lot of folks on the call. And I remember, so I wanted to understand, you said you heard from the American College of Cardiology. And so what made you bring a big team to the call, and what is it that stood out? What was your first impression, basically?
Well, I think, when I talked to my counterparts over at ACC and just heard the positive feedback that they had about the platform and working with Evermed, I thought, you know what, let's just take a risk here. Let's just take a chance. The Big Bang Theory. Let's try to get everybody together at once and see, can we get some consensus? Can we get a buy-in? Because like you said, the bigger the association, the more stakeholders, the harder it is to get that buy-in. And I felt like, from my management style or perspective, if I tried to piecemeal this kind of big change, it would just be a uphill battle to get everybody to buy into this. And people would start chipping away of all the reasons why you don't need to change, or we shouldn't change, or how risky this was, or did we really have the right platform? Have we spent enough time looking at everybody else? You can come up with 1,000 reasons. And in the association space, let's face it, we're very risk averse. People know that. We're very conservative. We're very slow. We're the anti kind of corporate, innovation model. I think it's not in the DNA of most associations to take risks and have an opportunity to fail. There are a few that have that, but that's not the overriding culture. So for me, I was a believer in that we needed to make a change, and that I felt like there was some real promise in what your platform had. I just needed to get majority of all the stakeholders together to look at this and to try to say, can we keep going forward, or is it not going forward? So that was sort of my, I guess, approach to doing it, instead of just one level up, buy, because I just feel like that's almost a recipe for failure when you do it that way.
Yeah, I love to say that, because I had one of these very direct, honest, authentic conversations like these ones with one of the association leaders, and they told me, they call it death by 1,000 cuts for innovation. They told me, well, we introduced this, and then there are many, many meetings, and then people try to find a way, any kind of angle for this not to go ahead, because a lot of people also don't have enough time and they feel overworked, that they had a bad experience with the software vendor. So they kind of find all these kind of reasons, but it won't work because of CME or something else. And through multiple of these meetings, the energy of enthusiasm and excitement and let's do something new suddenly starts to dissipate, and then basically innovation doesn't happen. And I love that you mentioned that, because you did, instead of that, you knew all that, so you kind of brought everyone in and say, let's explore this. ACC had a good experience, and then let's make a decision, instead of having many cuts.
Yeah. I mean, I really approached this, and I think this is something I personally am proud of, because it was a risk. I will tell you, physician leaders that, are you sure what we're doing here? Is this right? But I do think I'm proud of, I guess, the level of trust I built with a lot of our physician leaders and the confidence that they have to say, okay, if you really believe this, we're going to trust you and your recommendation too. But there were still skeptics along the way. And so there were points that I felt like, man, I am putting my neck out pretty far. But I just believed that this was a transformation we had to make, and that what I had experienced early on in working with you all, that you were the right partner to help us make that transition. But it does take that inertia to get a major project like this approved, buy-in, and everybody kind of really thinking about how are we going to make this work. So, and I felt like in my case, speed was going to be my friend. Speed was going to have to be my friend if we were going to get this done. And so you may have thought, this guy's crazy. I mean, I think we did this whole thing from initial maybe when we started talking to when we actually implemented was about maybe went live 9 months. I mean, from contract to live, I mean, we very fast.
Yeah. I think it was 9 months from when we met to actually live. And I think it's about 3-4 months from when we met to a contract. And I will share that with the ACC. We spoke at the SA conference and it was 3 months. And I noticed honestly with some of our, most successful clients that actually from the time we meet to the time we start to work together, that it's like 3-4 months, which is, relatively fast in the world of associations. But this is where it's like a digital innovator team that already wanted to solve this problem for a while. And that's when we met. There were click. So, okay, we met and there were all these guys on Zoom and there is your team. So what was your first impression, if you still recall, now after that meeting?
No, I think you checked so many of the boxes that we had. We wanted to create a unifying platform. We wanted a way to better present our content that had algorithms that delivered what people were interested in, or content based on what they had been watching before or things that they had been researching. You had a very effective search tool. So it was like, wow, okay, there's a real potential with this platform. So I think there was pretty positive feedback from everybody that was in the meeting. Yes, we had some naysayers. We had some people that started all the objections of why we can't do this, why this is not going to work and all of that. And so some of that just became kind of background. I tried to address and team tried to address some of those. I think there was enough of a group that we felt we have really got to then push this forward. And I think that the other thing that you did in that process or after the demo that really made an impact for us is we talked a lot about our business considerations. I talked our revenue. We had these other products that were revenue generating. We were coming out of the pandemic. So we didn't need and didn't want just a straight, like, here's our, price structure, buy our software, buy our technology and take it or leave it. You really dug into what our needs were and what our challenges were. And I felt like came up with a proposal for us when we got to the business terms of something that would work for us. And that made everyone feel very confident too. It wasn't just a cookie cutter straight, we're selling this technology, here's the licensing cost, and it is what it is. Or we can just offer you a 10% discount. You sign by this date. It wasn't that simple. And I think that gave us a lot of confidence that you really were understanding what our needs were, the unique aspects to our business.
Thank you for saying that. And I keep saying to my team, like our clients should care about the technology that we have to an extent. But what they will care at the end are the outcomes that the technology will help them achieve. They will care whether someone watches their content, like what we call engagement, which we measure by minutes per user per month of watch time. It's a very hard metric. They will care about revenue, and they will care about having clarity on what monetization paths to go after, right? They're having alignment on that, which is very strategic, as you just said. And they will care about digital satisfaction, ongoing surveys. So revenue engagement, digital satisfaction, which is digital relevance in a way, is at the end of the day what the outcomes are. And of course, technology is there to support that. So that's one of the reasons why we, at least at Evermed side, try to have conversations around that, because once we help with that, then the technology will find a way to kind of support that. But thanks for sharing that. And then you managed to get like a lot of things going relatively quickly. So anything you can share, I'm sure you cannot share everything how things work internally, but you had different stakeholders. You mentioned physician leaders. Sometimes there is a CEO, CFO, educational committees, board in some cases. So anything you could share that you think would be helpful, even if it's high level, that will be helpful people like yourself who are digital innovators in order to get to a yes
Well, I
internally.
think finding your champions is what I had to go do. Who else really then saw the vision or believed in the vision and then the platform that we had found to do this. So, got support from our executive director immediately. That was one of the first stops. Our chair of education was a huge partner in helping support this transformation and believed in the platform. So what I did was, again, being strategic, big bang, get all the staff that had some stake in this together to help reach a consensus if this was a possibility for us. Then was finding those key champions that I knew that I was going to need, from top leadership, staff leadership, the executive director, then the volunteer leadership, the chair of education, and then a finance committee liaison, because there's also a financial aspect to this and getting their buy-in and support. So having some of those key players in agreement and understanding the vision and what we were trying to do, I think helped us through all of this.
We started to work together, and there was a lot of content also to organize, go through. There was a lot of things to strategically figure out monetization paths. So anything you could share, if you remember from that period, that stood out, resonated, worked well, feedback you were getting from the team. Of course, you're not involved in everything day to day, but how did it start to work as a partnership?
Yeah. And, I would go back to when we first started talking with you. Not only did we look at the platform itself, but I think the piece that, again, I mentioned impressed us on the business side was you were listening to us. But then what you really brought that I felt was kind of like icing on the cake that I would like really raise a lot is the marketing support and the insight that you had to drive that engagement, and how we message this change and message this product, and what really was connecting with the buyers and the users of this. And so that support and insight that you gave was something that we had never experienced with any of our other technology partners in the education space or otherwise. I mean, usually those are all add-ons, and you came along and let us ask you these questions about how you're going to market this product. Let us talk about your segmentation. Let us talk about your pricing. Let us talk about what actually you are offering in the way of content. You just all out of the chute started digging in deep with us. We're like, wow, they're asking questions that other companies haven't asked, or we can ask, or what we had heard from other technology like learning management platforms or others. We can work with you on developing strategy and asking these questions, but it's a separate contract. It's a separate service. It just came with what you all were doing already. So we were incredibly impressed with that aspect.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I hear sometimes, just 2 weeks ago, I heard from someone, oh, when I talk to the technology companies, there's always like, they're asking us what we need. And then they say, well, this is an upsell X and upsell Y. And it's really like constantly some technology upsell rather than help us solve a problem. And then we can figure that one out. So I think I feel like this approach, honestly, it feels more human, and it feels like help someone else solve the problem in its entirety rather than a piece of it.
I mean, I could tell you the last platform that we were on for our learning management system, our OLC, we had a lot of issues, a lot of challenges just in terms of content delivery, getting content in, from the way people could find content. And we would talk to that company. It just seemed like all the time we were on the phone with them. And yeah, we can solve this for you. We can do this and this and this. We'd kind of get excited. Okay, get the twinkle in your eye. We have a solution. Okay, we'll send you a statement of work and, the additional price quote of what you're going to pay for all this. And maybe we'll be able to get to it in 4 to 6 months. And so it was just always so deflating that we didn't feel like we had ever had a partner that truly was, I think what you all have is like almost a systematic approach of how you work with us. And I will say this about you, Bozidar, it's kind of funny. One of the first calls that I had, you are very systematic in your thinking and your questioning and how you go through. And I remember you put up a document of, questions that you were going to ask us. And I think by like the third call we had with you, I said to everybody, are we going to go through this every time? But I really learned to appreciate how helpful that was to getting us to what really we were trying to solve and what the best solution was. And so it gave me another perspective on you that really deep dive systematic approach works for finding the right solution. It did for us.
Thank you for that. I didn't know that. Sometimes I joke with my team that you need all organs to work. You cannot just have heart and brain. You need all organs to work in order for things to work. So that's one of the reasons we try to understand all the aspects so that we can help the probe holistically. All right. And so the ACEP Anytime was launched, and that's the name of your new Netflix style digital library. It was launched. It's been on the market for more than a year now, so almost 2 years. No, a year and a half, I would say. February 24, yeah. So I should know this better. So it's almost a year and a half. And so what has so far been the experience in terms of qualitative feedback from end users, in terms of anything, numbers you could share? So qualitative, quantitative, but also feedback from that you hear from the leadership, feedback that you hear from the staff or the project leaders are working on this. Like just holistic you can share again. And I'm really interested in like hearing how it is, because one of the things we want to help other associations learn like how it actually is. So I wanted to ask that.
Well, I think first and foremost, it was a huge transformation in terms of a very modern platform, and the way you could actually find content, the way it served up content to you was just like night and day. The probably number one stat that I think most proud of and just mind blown over is our net promoter score. And that's something that you all have built into the platform, which is great, is, the little survey tool at the end. So we really know how we're doing. And I think getting that instantaneous kind of real-time feedback is so helpful. But again, ACEP had clunky delivery, old kind of looking technology. It just was such a poor user experience. When we saw our first net promoter score out of this and it was 35, we were just all like on the floor, almost passed out. We couldn't believe it was probably one of the best things that ACEP was doing in terms of net promoter score and how well it was received. And I think the benchmarker context is 30 is great. So to really be exceeding that, anything above 30 was really impressive. The other thing that we saw dramatic change in immediately was the utilization and the uptake of this. So I think before we had users only spending just not a whole lot of time. When we started delving into this and seeing that people were on average watching 16 videos for their sessions was just like unbelievable. The viewing time was 68 minutes. People were looking at these, which was like more than triple what we had seen before on these old platforms, where we even could actually access some of that data. I think that, and then the completion rate, we've had about half of our users totally complete courses that we can see versus our old learning management system, which was only about 18%. We think we hit a home run in the way of engagement and getting people to really, again, we know it's great content because we hear that piece a lot. And we need to get this information out, but we needed people to engage with it. And the Evermed platform really allowed for that.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. And thanks for sharing also the actual results. One comment just to put things into perspective. For example, I recently was reading about what's the NPS score of LMSs in general, like as a category of products, because they have been around for 15, 20 years, established category. We don't compete really with LMSs. All of our clients have LMSs and continue to use LMSs for long form courses and compliance and also credit claiming. So they're designed for that. They're never designed for engagement. But because there's a lot of clunkiness involved that we hear, again, I'm not an expert at LMSs. I read somewhere that the LMS average score is 6 or 7, somewhere there. So I need to double check that. So there is definitely not what modern doctors want to see in the future, unless it's a long form course. Okay, then I have to go through the course, then I'll do it. But nowadays, I sometimes say, we don't wake up in the morning, and doctors don't wake up in the morning thinking, oh my God, I can't wait to go through the 8-hour course today. They do it only if they have to. But they do wake up with the thought, I have 10 minutes today or 5 minutes today, and I heard about something yesterday, and there is this procedure, and I know there is innovation. Let me check on a trusted platform in like 5 to 10 minutes. And I think that that's where the numbers that you're sharing also, to put things into perspective, sometimes the metric of watch time per user per month, that's like the hardest metric of engagement that you can find. The hardest. These are busy doctors. To get what you said, 168 minutes in the first year of average watch time per user. Oh no, I think that was actually per month that you had. I knew you had massive, like you watch per month, but have double check that. These are busy people. They're not good. They used to spend like 5 minutes per user per month, if that. And I think that this is something we constantly track because it's really a measure of whether they're using the platform or not. Anything you can share on the qualitative side you've been hearing from your educational community or just from the user that would tell you, people who know you, and also from the folks from your team, for folks working on the actual leading the project and content and everything?
Yeah. No, we get, I think, great feedback from our users. And I think, one of our biggest champions today and customers is our executive director, who's an emergency physician, Dr. Sandy Schneider. She's always raving about how easy it is to watch content. Again, you mentioned something I probably should have talked about earlier, that this transition from the LMS had to make us really think about the form and how much time our content pieces are, because these are definitely more short form content, which totally fits the personality of emergency physicians. ER doctors are self-described adrenaline junkies and ADD. So they don't have a lot of time. What do I need to know? Tell me quickly. Give me the, Clip Notes version. And if I want to go back and study more, I will. So this format, I think, fits perfectly with the learning styles of emergency doctors, particularly, and how they like to learn and have information delivered to them. But again, user feedback has been really, really positive because, again, it's on a modern platform. It's delivering content they're interested in. Not everything's roses, as we all know. That I will say we've got to work on our side is we've used a lot of captured content from meetings is how we initially really populated the platform. But, we've struggled with, in some cases, some of the quality of some of the lectures, the audio or the slides or the video that goes along with it. So we really have looked for those opportunities of content capture and how we can do it in a better way to make sure that all our content across the board just really looks stellar. So that's just, I think, kind of quality check or quality move that we're making. We're moving. And then we have a lot of other, content. This isn't your question right now, but a lot of other content that the platform has allowed us to think about: legacy products, print products, other products. How are we moving those into a digital environment? And we've been doing it. We've had these products that we've just been scratching our head. What do we do with these? How do we modernize them? And again, working with you and your team, you've shown us pathways to modernize these legacy, kind of outdated products that we've had, case-based learning products that we have, question banks. There's just a whole lot that we've been able to do utilizing your platform.
No, I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because oftentimes we find that conference recordings are the starting point because they're low-hanging fruit, they're fresh, credible content that has CME credits that basically becomes a passive archive instead of being watched and curated throughout the year. But oftentimes that first success with new NPS score, with user experience, with having a new revenue generating subscription product, that starts to create that positive movement inside the organization where the questions start to become what you just said. How can we add other legacy content that we had, or libraries of content that we had, could be digitized product, and add it to this conference recording library, plus maybe podcast, plus webinar recordings. I've been having lately more and more discussions with associations we work with about what I call originals, like Netflix originals, which is, hey, can we now create content that's about up to 20 minutes and start to create some sorts of editors for each subspecialty, and start to create maybe 2 videos per month in each subspecialty, about 30 videos a month, so that we start to create those originals that are specific to this unique context of, I have 5, 10, 15, max 20 minutes. Can I watch it here? Maybe earn CME credits. And I think that's really powerful because it's almost like launch of a Netflix style platform is not the end kind of point. It's a starting point from which the journey starts.
Most definitely. And I can tell you, because we are utilizing this platform now, and I think we all understand the real power of its ability to deliver and engage, we have actually restructured our education committee, where we have a subcommittee on innovation that is just developing new content pieces, the originals, the ACEP originals, and we're doing the ACEP shorts for ACEP Anytime. So it's also become a great way to engage our physician volunteers that are passionate about education and utilizing this platform to deliver these different practice areas, these different clinical areas. I think it's created even more energy around developing education because people know we have this really slick, so to speak, platform that they can now utilize.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah. So, what would you tell them based on the experience so far? Like 2 or 3 pieces of advice that encourage them on what they should do next.
I think we've got to change our mindset. I mean, I know Elon Musk can be a controversial figure today to some people just because of his foray into politics, but in terms of business and in terms of what he's done with some incredible products in our marketplace today and technological advances, his philosophy I really love. You got to try to fail fast, experiment. And I think in terms of association offerings, we've got to think a little bit more like that. We've got to be more willing to test and try, take more risks. And so, to me, it's more about finding the reasons to say yes than it is the reasons to say no, because it seems to me a lot the mindset and many association colleagues that I know or associations that I talk to, they're just more looking for the reasons to not do something, to not say no, because they're afraid of maybe something not working out exactly how it should work out. And that's where we need our physician leaders to be a little more supportive and open and understanding. I think I'm lucky in emergency medicine that I work with some great doctors that, because of the way they practice, they're very MacGyver. They have to find solutions and they have to try different things sometimes in an emergency setting. So I think they may be a little more forgiving for their staff and be able to try some of these things. But we have a lot of the same association culture issues that we've got to push back. So I think it's finding more ways to say yes is the simple reason. Find more ways to try things. And, does take more energy, takes more effort. We're all, I think, have more on our plates than we can do. And so sometimes it's easier. I don't want to think about trying something new. I don't have the bandwidth to do that. But I think we're never going to get to another level of how we deliver that value for members of our association or really figure what's our way in the future. And I think we're in a time where associations are really probably challenged like never before. More competition, the things that were unique to us are not. I mean, they could find in the marketplace everywhere. We've got to look at different ways that we're delivering that value, and we've got to be competitive and meeting consumers/members' expectations.
I love what you said because, and you said somewhere at the beginning of our conversation that there are other places where doctors go to for information from for-profit companies of the world. And so sometimes when I have conversations with associations about this idea to consolidate as much as possible of on-demand content into one library, I say, well, your end users are going to these other 5 websites also. So when they come to yours, they should have as much as possible things in one place, and they are willing to pay a subscription for that because it makes it easier for them. All right. This has been an amazing conversation, and I have one more question for you, Bobby. So what excites you about the future based on everything we talked about today?
Well, I think we have so many ideas of where we want to go and need to go with ACEP Anytime, but two that are right in front of us that we know working with you all, we have an opportunity to do is physicians have CME requirements that are unique state by state to maintain their license. And if we can best understand where or know where physicians have licenses, where they're practicing, and then use this platform when they log on to remind them, hey, you've got these state requirements that are either fulfilled or left to fulfill. And here are some ACEP originals, ACEP shorts that will meet those requirements for you, that meet the number of hours that are required by the state. So again, it's back to that making this easy for physicians. If we know what requirements are for a hospital system where the physician practices, you can do the exact same thing. And then finally, in terms of like board certification and recertification, I think there's a real opportunity to work closely with our specialty board. And I think every medical society could do this to better understand in the certifying exams where there might be gaps in knowledge based on test scores or however that's measured. And again, deliver education to help remediate or meet that needs. I think those kind of advances are going to really be on the next frontier for us to say, we know you, we know you, we know what you need, and here's how we're making this really easy for you. So I think that gets us even closer to that YouTube, Spotify thing in a real meaningful way where we know what you like and we're giving it to you in an easy way.
I love that mindset. Like, we know what you want and need, and we'll make it easy for you. I think that mindset alone into anything applied in the future, I think it really make huge difference. That's the expectation. All right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk today about this topic, and thank you for sharing the entire experience so openly. I think it's going to be really super valuable for all the digital innovators out there, which there are, in the association space that want to break the new frontiers. Thank you. I will stay for a couple more minutes here to finalize this recording, and can't wait to publish the episode.